In early August 1878, Memphis, Tennessee, the Bluff City, was a prosperous river city with 47,000 citizens. Memphis had battled yellow fever on numerous occasions, most recently in 1873, when 2,000 citizens had perished. Town leaders and citizens remained guarded, but hopeful that they could avoid the disaster occurring in New Orleans and other river cities. Memphis newspapers reported with growing concern how Yellow Jack had made its way up the Mississippi River, hitting Vicksburg, Natchez, and other nearby towns, such as Grenada, Mississippi. Civic leaders tried to clean up the town under the mistaken belief that yellow fever was spread due to unsanitary conditions. Disinfectants and medicine were stockpiled. The mayor of Memphis, John Flippin, activated several checkpoints into and out of the city and opened a quarantine station on President's Island, south of the city. All river traffic was required to stop at the station before moving further along the river or into the center of the city. Unfortunately, not every sailor respected these safety precautions. On August 1st, a riverboat deckhand named William Warren left his riverboat, quarantined at President's Island, and landed at Memphis's famous cobblestone landing. Warren inadvertently carried the yellow fever virus with him, and it was this egregious action that nearly destroyed Memphis and sealed the fate of one Kate Bionda. Kate Connolly was born in Ireland in about 1845. As a young woman, she immigrated to America and eventually made her way to Memphis, Tennessee. By 1866, Kate had met Bartholomew Bianda, an Italian immigrant who had also recently arrived in the area. Later that year, the local newspaper announced their marriage. By 1870, census records show that Kate and Bartholomew were living in downtown Memphis with two children, Willie, born in 1868, and Josephine, born in 1870. By 1878, the Biondas were living and working at 212 Front Street in the Pinch District of downtown Memphis. It was there that Yellow Jack arrived in the Bluff City, destroying the Bionda and thousands of other families. The Pinch District was one of the earliest commercial districts and residential neighborhoods dating back to the founding of Memphis in 1819. It was home to many Irish, Italian, and Jewish immigrants, many of whom had fled Europe during the famines of the 1840s. The district got its name from the phrase pinch gut, which was a derogatory term for the often emaciated residents who lived in the district. While today the district is anchored by the Bass Pro Store, located inside of a modern-day pyramid, and the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. In the 1870s, it was a diverse neighborhood made up of small homes and various commercial buildings, particularly on Front Street. By the early 1870s, the Bionda family had moved to 212 Front Street, where they operated a restaurant, saloon, and snack shop in the first floor of the building, while living on the second floor. 212 Front was one of the three sections of a larger four-story building that locals called the Trigg Building, located at the corner of Front Street and Adams Avenue. The Biondas likely shared the Trigg Building with many other families and small businesses. On August 1st, 1878, the riverboat worker William Warren left quarantine and made his way to 212 Front Street, where he stopped at the Bionda restaurant. Kate Bionda would have served him there. A day later, Warren was dead from fever. A week after that, Kate was gravely ill with yellow fever, and on August 13th, she passed away in the second-floor residence above the restaurant. Kate's illness was first reported on August 13th. Local authorities asked citizens to be calm. Kate's tragic story was told in the August 14th issue of the newspaper. But there would be no calm in Memphis. After 10 more cases of yellow fever were announced the next day, a great panic arose in the city, the likes of which had never been seen, as tens of thousands of citizens rushed to flee the city. Among those fleeing were Kate Bionda's grieving family. So we are here in downtown Memphis now, looking searching for the location of the Bionda house and restaurant. This is where Kate Bionda, this first victim of yellow fever, would have contracted yellow fever from one of the sailors who came up and broke quarantine on the Mississippi River. That's by far the most accepted theory of how yellow fever arrived in Memphis. It's certainly likely there were other victims before Kate, but Kate is the very first confirmed victim, and we know that she contracted it at her restaurant serving one of these sailors with yellow fever. The Bionda family owned this restaurant on the first floor of their house, and then they lived on the second floor. Finding it is easy. The newspaper articles of the time tell us exactly where it was. It was on Front Street, which of course was the last street before you get to the river back then. Understanding that what we call Mud Island didn't exist in 1878, it was formed decades later. So that would have been really besides the promenade in front of the Front Street, that would have been the last stop before you got to the river. So this is very much a restaurant and a house facing the river, very easy access to the river. And so we know from the newspaper articles that their house was located on Front Street, just north of Adams Street. Looking on a modern map, it's very clear where that is. A little bit interesting, if you ask me, it might account for some of the weirdness that happens in Memphis politics, because the Bionda house, the Bionda restaurant where Kate Bionda contracted yellow fever and where she eventually died, becoming the very first victim of yellow fever, is located right here. This, if you're familiar with it, is Memphis's City Hall. Of course, this is a much more modern building built long after those houses would have been destroyed, but Memphis's City Hall stands exactly where the Bionda house and restaurant was. This is ground zero for yellow fever in Memphis, Tennessee. Today, the Memphis City Hall. Ironic or just strange, I don't know, but that is that. Kate Bionda was buried in Memphis's Catholic Calvary Cemetery, founded in 1867 for the town's growing Catholic population. Many of the Catholic victims of the fever were buried here. Some of the victims have their own monuments and markers, while others would have been quickly buried without permanent grave markers. Today, a monument to all the yellow fever victims has been erected at the cemetery. Though the Bionda family had purchased a 4-person plot before the yellow fever epidemic, only one person is buried there today, the daughter, Josephine, who died in 1948. So where is Kate Bionda herself buried? We are here at Calvary Catholic Cemetery in Memphis, Tennessee, in search of Kate Bionda, the very first yellow fever victim of 1878 here in Memphis, Tennessee, the first recognized victim. We're trying to find her grave. According to most sources, she is buried right here where we're standing in this section, the old section of the Calvary Cemetery. I don't think anyone's ever been able to find her grave marker. If it exists, I've looked, done a look myself and tried to find it. This is sort of the old section right here that we're standing in. It's very possible she did not have a grave marker in the kind of the chaos of these early days of the yellow fever, panic and chaos. A lot of these victims did not have their own markers. They were buried quickly and sort of forgotten. Most of the markers around here are a little bit newer than 1878, so I'm wondering if she just never had a marker and then the rest of this was kind of built over that, or it's possible she could be buried somewhere. Though most of us are taught not to speak ill of the dead, rumors were in the air soon after Kate Bionda's death concerning her character. Her bereaved husband felt the need to place this notice in the newspaper, defending his wife. 5 years after his wife's death, Bartholomew Bianda passed away in the same family home at 212 Front Street. He was survived by his 2 teenage children, Willie and Josephine. The article announcing Bartholomew's death also gives us an interesting and unique look into the death of Kate Bionda. According to the article, Kate did not contract yellow fever at her restaurant, but across town, while caring for several children who were presumably sick from yellow fever. We may never know the truth of what really happened to Kate. Kate and Bartholomew's daughter, Josephine, lived a long life into her 70s. Their son Willie, however, seems to have dropped off the historical record soon after Bartholomew's death. This article shows that Willie was already in trouble with the law at the age of 15. Without the love and care of his parents, who knows what Willie Bionda's final fate really was. In 1884, the former Bianda home was sold. With a change in street numbers, 212 Front Street, ground zero for yellow fever in Memphis, disappears from history. The building where Kate Bionda lived and died, along with the surrounding buildings of the block, survived for another 80 years. In 1959, after decades of blight, the city of Memphis destroyed nearly the entire block, including the former 212 Front Street. The block was turned into the new Memphis Civic Center, housing federal, state, and city offices. The site of the former Bionda House and Restaurant became the new Memphis City Hall and Council Chambers, where the local government still meets today. Kate Bionda was the first of over 5,000 deaths during the 1878 Yellow Fever Epidemic in Memphis. Whether she was truly patient zero or not, Kate remains an important figure in one of the most tragic episodes in Memphis history.